"Sir, we need to request that you relocate," the supervisor said, her voice cold as she sided with the entitled white passenger. She had no idea she wasn't just displacing another traveler. She was humiliating the CEO of Pinnacle Investments, the very man about to inject $120 million into her struggling airline. As security officers approached, hands near their tasers, Marcus Daniels didn't make a scene. He simply glanced at his phone where a notification confirmed the first $25 million transfer had just cleared. With quiet fury, he tapped reverse transaction. They thought they were removing a problem. They had just canceled their own lifeline. Before we dive into this shocking story of racial discrimination and corporate power, let me know where you're watching from. If you believe in justice and holding corporations accountable, hit that like and subscribe button to stay updated on more true stories of courage in the face of prejudice. Marcus Daniels straightened his custom Armani tie as he settled into Seat 2A of SkyWest Airlines Flight 1876. At 42, the Harvard Business School graduate had transformed himself from a South Chicago housing project kid into one of the few black CEOs in America's financial sector. His company, Pinnacle Investments, managed assets worth billions, but today's meeting would be his biggest yet. For months, Marcus had studied SkyWest's financials, identified their weaknesses, and crafted a proposal to inject $120 million that would revolutionize their aging fleet. He'd booked this premium first-class ticket weeks ago, wanting to review his presentation during the 3-hour flight to SkyWest's headquarters as passengers continued boarding. Marcus pulled out his tablet, scrolling through his meticulously prepared slides one last time. Each graphic told the story of SkyWest's potential future with Pinnacle's backing. He'd rehearsed his pitch countless times, anticipating every possible question. The flight attendant, Heather Stevens, approached his row. "Boarding pass, sir." She asked, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Marcus handed it over. "Good morning." Heather studied it longer than seemed necessary. "And your name is Marcus Daniels." He maintained his professional demeanor, though he noticed the white businessman across the aisle hadn't been questioned. "And you're sure this is your seat?" Her tone carried a hint of skepticism. "Yes, I'm certain." Marcus pulled out his phone, showing the digital confirmation. Heather forced a smile. "Very well, sir." She moved on without offering the pre-flight drink she'd served to other first-class passengers. What Marcus couldn't see was happening in the galley. Bradley Wellington, SkyWest's vice president of operations, had boarded early and pulled Heather aside. "We have a VIP boarding later who will need accommodation." Bradley had whispered, subtly nodding toward Marcus's seat. "That passenger in 2A, make sure you verify his credentials thoroughly." Bradley Wellington represented old money and older thinking. His family had been in aviation since commercial flights began, and he viewed SkyWest as his birthright. The prospect of a black-owned investment firm gaining influence over his airline made his jaw clench. He'd initially tried blocking the meeting altogether, but the company's desperate need for capital had overruled his objections. Marcus noticed another flight attendant approach his row again. "Excuse me, sir? May I see your boarding pass?" "One more time. System shows some confusion." Marcus maintained his composure, though he'd been flying first class for 15 years without ever facing such scrutiny. "Certainly," he said, presenting it again. The attendant studied it, then reluctantly nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Daniels." Across the cabin, Bradley smirked as he texted Richard Whitley, his longtime golf buddy. "Delayed but on my way. Got you covered." In the terminal, Richard Whitley fumed at the gate agent. "What do you mean I'm in economy? I always fly first class. I'm sorry, Mr. Whitley, but today's flight is completely full in first class." Richard's face wrined. "Get Bradley on the phone now." Marcus observed these interactions while appearing absorbed in his tablet. Growing up on Chicago's South Side had taught him to stay aware of his surroundings. His single mother had worked 3 jobs to keep their apartment, sacrificing everything for his education. "They'll try to make you invisible." She'd always told him, "Don't you ever let them." He'd faced skepticism at every step from his high school counselor who suggested trade school instead of college applications, to Harvard classmates who assumed he was there on affirmative action despite his perfect SAT scores, to the bank that denied his first business loan despite an impeccable business plan. Each time Marcus had responded the same way, excellence and persistence. He'd graduated top of his class, built Pinnacle from scratch, earned the respect of Wall Street's most critical players. His company now employed over 200 people, 40% of whom were minorities. He'd personally mentored. Today's SkyWest deal would be Pinnacle's largest ever, positioning them as major players in airline financing. The contract was practically signed, just needing the final handshakes at headquarters. Marcus had arranged for the first installment of $25 million to clear immediately after digital signatures, showing SkyWest his commitment. Heather approached again. "Can I get you a beverage before takeoff?" "Sir." Her tone was noticeably colder than when addressing other passengers. "Water, please," Marcus replied, maintaining professionalism despite the apparent microaggression. When she returned with a plastic cup instead of the glass tumblers, other first-class passengers received. Marcus simply thanked her, refusing to be provoked. The cabin filled quickly. Marcus noticed several passengers glancing his way, then quickly averting their eyes. He'd experienced this throughout his career, the subtle questioning of whether he belonged in premium spaces. His phone buzzed with a text from his executive assistant. SkyWest execs confirmed for 2P. MCEO sending car to airport. Marcus smiled. Soon none of these small indignities would matter. The deal would change everything, not just for Pinnacle, but potentially for an entire industry where diversity remained abysmal. As the final boarding announcement sounded, Marcus noticed Bradley Wellington watching him from the galley, whispering something to Heather while gesturing subtly toward seat 2A. She nodded and approached Marcus once more. "Sir, there seems to be a problem with your seat assignment?" She began, her voice carrying just enough for nearby passengers to hear. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He recognized this tactic, creating a public spectacle to force compliance through humiliation. It had happened to him before, at restaurants, hotels, and exclusive clubs, but never on a plane bound for a meeting where he was about to become one of the company's largest investors. "There's no problem with my seat assignment," Marcus replied calmly, removing his boarding pass again. "Seat 2A confirmed weeks ago." Heather's smile thinned. "I'll need to check with my supervisor." As she walked away, Marcus noticed Richard Whitley finally boarding, his face flushed with entitlement as he paused at the galley to speak with Bradley. Both men glanced toward Marcus, not bothering to hide their contempt. In that moment, Marcus knew exactly what was coming. He'd experienced variations of this scene throughout his life. The only difference was the setting. He took a deep breath, centering himself. Whatever happened next, he wouldn't lose sight of why he was on this plane. He hadn't fought his way from South Chicago to Harvard to the boardrooms of Wall Street to be defeated by such blatant prejudice. Little did Bradley Wellington know he was about to turn one of Pinnacle's greatest investors into his company's most dangerous adversary. Richard Whitley stormed down the aisle of the first-class cabin designer briefcase, swinging dangerously. Close to other passengers, his tailored suit couldn't mask the redness of his face as he spotted the last remaining seat in economy class. "This is absolutely unacceptable," he snarled at Heather. "Do you know who I am?" Heather lowered her voice. "Mr. Whitley, I understand. Mr. Wellington is aware of the situation." "Well, he better fix it," Richard snapped loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. "I don't fly coach, period." Marcus observed the commotion while reviewing his presentation, noting how the flight crew scrambled to plate the I-8 passenger. He'd seen this behavior countless times, entitlement masquerading as importance. Bradley emerged from the galley, clasping Richard's shoulder. "Slight misunderstanding, Rich. We'll sort it out." He shot a pointed look toward Marcus, then whispered something to Heather. With practiced precision, Heather approached Marcus, her smile professional but cold. "Sir, We have a situation with a VIP passenger who needs this particular seat. We can accommodate you in our economy section. With a voucher for future travel, I booked this seat weeks ago, Marcus replied evenly, and I need to work during this flight. Heather's smile tightened. I understand, but we're asking for your cooperation. May I ask why this particular seat is needed when there are other first-class seats available? Marcus gestured to empty 3C. Richard Whitley stepped forward, voice dripping with disdain. Because some of us actually belong in first class. The implication was unmistakable. The cabin fell silent. Several passengers shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. I belong exactly where my boarding pass says I belong, Marcus responded, keeping his voice measured despite the open disrespect. The flight supervisor appeared next to Heather. Is there a problem here? Before Marcus could respond, Richard interjected. Yes, I need my regular seat, and this gentleman is being difficult. I see, the supervisor said, barely glancing at Marcus's boarding pass. Sir, we need to request that you relocate to accommodate our priority passenger. Marcus raised an eyebrow. I wasn't aware airlines still categorize passengers beyond their ticketed class. Bradley stepped forward. Sir, we can make this difficult or simple. Your choice. Marcus recognized the threat behind those words. I'd like to speak with the captain. The captain is preparing for takeoff, the supervisor replied curtly. This is a security matter. Now, security. Marcus kept his voice level. How exactly is my sitting in the seat? I purchased a security issue, as if on cue. 2 security officers appeared at the front of the cabin. Their hands rested casually near their tasers, a detail not lost on Marcus' final call, Sir Bradley said, with thinly veiled satisfaction. Move voluntarily, or we'll have you removed. Marcus weighed his options. He could stand his ground and likely be forcibly removed, possibly arrested on manufactured charges of interfering with flight crew, a federal offense that could derail the entire deal. Or he could swallow this injustice and live to fight another A with decades of experience navigating such moments. Marcus made his choice. I'll relocate under protest, he said, gathering his briefcase. And I'll need your names and employee IDs. Just be grateful we're still letting you fly, Richard muttered, already settling into the contested seat. As Marcus stood, he noticed several passengers recording with their phones. The humiliation was being documented in real time. One of the security officers stepped closer, hand still near his taser. Let's move along, sir. With dignity intact but pride wounded, Marcus walked through the first-class cabin toward economy. As he passed Bradley, their eyes met briefly. In that moment, Marcus saw not just prejudice but fear of changing power structures, fear of diversity in spaces long reserved for people who looked like Bradley. Has something like this ever happened to you or someone you know? Comment number 1. If you believe what they did to Marcus was blatant discrimination, hit that like button. If you think companies should be held accountable for how they treat all customers, subscribe to see how Marcus turns the tables on SkyWest Airlines. What would you do if you were Marcus? Stay calm and plan your revenge or make a scene right there on the plane. The airline has no idea who they're messing with. But what will Marcus do next, with $120 million hanging in the balance? Marcus Daniels navigated the narrow economy CL class aisle, acutely aware of every eye on him. Whispers followed his progress. What did he do? Was he threatening someone? They never removed people from first class. The walk felt interminable. Each step reinforced the message Bradley Wellington had sent. No matter his accomplishments, his wealth, or his influence, Marcus would always be seen as someone who didn't belong in certain spaces. He finally reached row 34, where a middle seat awaited between 2 already seated passengers. Both looked up with visible discomfort as the flight attendant pointed to his new assignment. "Excuse me," Marcus said politely, squeezing past the passenger in the aisle seat, a heavy-set man who made minimal effort to move. Once seated, Marcus found himself wedged between the man and a woman who immediately pressed herself against the window, creating as much distance as possible. His knees pressed painfully against the seat in front, his elbows forced against his sides. From first class to this, the symbolism wasn't lost on him. He reached for the overhead air vent only to find it broken. The cabin temperature already felt 10 degrees warmer than first class. Marcus loosened his tie slightly, refusing to show his discomfort. A different flight attendant passed by, studiously avoiding eye contact. When Marcus pressed the call button, 20 minutes later, "No," one responded. "They're usually pretty slow back here." The man beside him commented, "Not unkindly." Marcus nodded, then attempted to extract his tablet from his briefcase. The confined space made even this simple task nearly impossible. When he finally succeeded, he discovered the in-flight Wi-Fi signal was significantly weaker in economy, too weak to download the latest market figures he needed for his presentation. Halfway through the flight, Marcus asked for water. The flight attendant returned with a half-filled plastic cup, sloshing some onto his tablet before hurrying away without apology. As Marcus dabbed at his device with a napkin, a notification appeared on his phone. Luggage alert, itinerary change detected. He tapped the notification, revealing that his checked bag, containing his backup presentation, materials, contract copies, and change of clothes for the meeting had been rerouted to Minneapolis. No explanation provided. This was no coincidence. Bradley Wellington was sending a message, or rather a warning. Marcus took a slow breath, remembering his mother's words. "When they go low, you document everything." Discreetly, he began recording voice memos on his phone, noting times, names, and specific actions. He'd learned long ago that in America, justice often required evidence, especially for someone who looked like him. As he documented the events, Marcus noticed a passenger across the aisle surreptitiously recording video. Their eyes met briefly, and the passenger gave an almost imperceptible nod of solidarity. The beverage service came and went. Every passenger around Marcus received a full can of soda or juice. He received another half-filled cup of water. "Excuse me," Marcus called as the attendant started to move away. "Could I please have the rest of the water?" The flight attendant turned back with visible annoyance. "This is all we have available for now, sir." The man beside Marcus frowned. "You just gave that gentleman a full can of Coke." He pointed out, gesturing to another passenger. "I can come back later if we have extra." The attendant replied curtly before moving on. An hour into the flight, Marcus overheard a conversation between two flight attendants in the nearby galley. Wellington said to make sure he doesn't get comfortable, one whispered, "I don't get it. Why is Bradley so worked up over this guy? Apparently he's some hotshot investor. Bradley says he's trying to take over the airline." "That guy? You're kidding, Wellington. And Whitley go way back, country club buddies. Whitley always gets the royal treatment." Marcus recorded this exchange, too. The pieces falling into place. This wasn't just about a seat. It was about power territory and a deep-seated fear of change. He checked his phone again and noticed something unexpected. The video of his removal from first class had already been uploaded to social media. The hashtag #JotDirtBlack. CEO removed was trending with thousands of shares in just 30 minutes. One post read, "Disgusting treatment of black executive on our SkyWest Air removed from first class to make room for white passenger black CEO removed." Another showed he had the boarding pass for that seat. Security called because he checks notes sat in the seat he paid for black co-removed. The comments were flooding in by the minute. Some passengers on the very same flight were posting their own angles of the incident Marcus watched with mixed emotions as his humiliation became a viral moment. On one hand, the public exposure might force accountability. On the other, he'd spent his entire career avoiding being reduced to nothing more than his race. He'd wanted to be known for his investment acumen, his business strategies, his mentorship, not as a victim of discrimination, but as his mother had always said, "Sometimes the spotlight finds you for reasons you didn't choose. What matters is what you do when it does." His phone buzzed with messages from Pinnacle's executive team, who'd already seen the videos. "Are you okay? Do you need legal intervention? Should we cancel the SkyWest meeting?" Marcus replied simply, "Proceeding as planned. We'll explain later." He glanced toward the front of the plane where Bradley Wellington was visible, laughing with Richard Whitley over champagne. They had no idea that their actions had just been broadcast to millions. The plane began its descent. Marcus prepared himself mentally for the meeting ahead. He would need to compartmentalize this humiliation to present himself as the consummate professional, despite arriving without his materials in a wrinkled suit and with the entire internet discussing his public degradation. Yet beneath his composed exterior, something had shifted. Marcus had built his career on strategic investments, on identifying opportunities where others saw only obstacles, and Bradley Wellington had just made a catastrophic investment mistake. He'd assumed Marcus's dignity was a price worth paying for Whitley's comfort. By the time the plane touched down, the video had been viewed over 2 million times. SkyWest's social media team was frantically posting a generic apology about investigating the incident, but it was too late. The damage was already spiraling beyond their control. As the seatbelt sign turned off, Marcus remained seated, allowing the rush of passengers to subside. He didn't want to squeeze past anyone else today. He'd had enough of making himself smaller to accommodate others. The sleek SkyWest corporate headquarters rose 38 stories above downtown, its glass facade reflecting clouds and blue sky, a building designed to embody flight itself. Marcus Daniels emerged from his rideshare, straightening his suit jacket. Despite the flight's indignities, he'd managed to freshen up in the airport restroom, maintaining the impeccable appearance that had become part of his professional armor. 2 security guards stood at the lobby entrance, their eyes tracking Marcus as he approached. He'd anticipated this moment, prepared for it with the same thoroughness he brought to every aspect of his career. "Good afternoon," Marcus greeted them confidently. "I have a 2-hour meeting with the executive team." The guards exchanged glances. Name one asked skepticism, evident Marcus Daniels, CEO of Pinnacle Investments. The guard examined his tablet, then looked up with narrowed eyes. "There's a Mr. Daniels expected," but he hesitated. Marcus understood the unspoken words. "But not someone who looks like you. I can provide identification," Marcus offered calmly, retrieving his driver's license and business card. The guard studied both, comparing the license photo to Marcus's face with unnecessary scrutiny. "Wait here, please!" He stepped away to make a call. Marcus maintained his composed stance, aware of the second guard watching him closely, hand resting near his weapon. This scene had played out countless times throughout his career, the presumption of not belonging, of being an imposter. In the polished marble floor, Marcus caught his reflection, a successful black man in a tailored suit, whose Harvard degree, billions in managed assets, and corner office on Wall Street still couldn't guarantee he'd be treated with basic dignity. The first guard returned, his expression tense. "Sir, there seems to be some confusion. The Marcus Daniels we're expecting is the CEO handling the major investment." "Yes, that's correct, I am." "That Marcus Daniels, I'll need to escalate this," the guard replied, lifting his radio again. A receptionist approached her, smile tight. "Sir, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. The Marcus Daniels we're expecting is a Harvard MBA with 20 years in investment banking, currently CEO of Pinnacle Investments, here to finalize a $120 million deal with SkyWest Airlines." Marcus completed her sentence, his voice level but firm. "That Marcus Daniels is standing right in front of you." The receptionist's smile faltered. "One moment, please." She retreated to her desk and made a call, speaking in hushed tones while repeatedly glancing toward Marcus. 3 minutes passed. Then 5 other visitors entered, were verified, and proceeded to elevators without delay. Marcus remained in the lobby, the subject of curious stares and whispers. Finally, the receptionist returned with the security supervisor. "Mr. Daniels, we've been unable to verify your appointment. I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises." Marcus took a measured breath. Please call Walter Kingston, SkyWest's CEO. Tell him Marcus Daniels is in the lobby. Sir, if you don't leave voluntarily, we'll need to contact the authorities, the supervisor warned. By all means. Marcus replied, Please do call them. I'd be happy to explain how SkyWest is blocking their largest potential investor from a meeting confirmed weeks ago. The receptionist's eyes widened at his calm confidence. She whispered something to the supervisor, who reluctantly made another call. Minutes later, the elevator doors opened, revealing Walter Kingston himself. SkyWest's silver-haired CEO, flanked by two board members. His face showed confusion, then recognition followed by horrified understanding as he connected the dots between the viral video he'd likely just been briefed about and the man standing in his lobby. Mr. Daniels Kingston hurried forward. Hand extended. I sincerely apologize for this misunderstanding. We've been expecting you. Behind Kingston, Bradley. Wellington emerged from the same elevator, his face paling as he recognized Marcus Bradley, quickly composed himself, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Marcus Daniels. Bradley stepped forward. What an unexpected situation. We received word of some disturbance on your flight, but never imagined. No disturbance at all, Marcus replied smoothly. Just an interesting seating reassignment. I'm sure the millions of people who viewed the video online would be fascinated by your perspective on it. Kingston's head snapped toward Bradley, alarm evident video. What video? Marcus retrieved his phone, displaying the trending hashtag and view count, now approaching 5 million. Kingston's complexion turned ashen. Perhaps we should proceed to our meeting, Kingston suggested, gesturing toward the elevator. We have a conference room prepared. The executive suite on the 38th floor offered panoramic views of the city. Kingston led Marcus to a plush boardroom where the entire executive team waited along with their legal counsel. Nervous glances bounced around the table as Marcus took his seat. Before we begin, Kingston started, I want to personally address what happened on your flight. It appears there was a serious breakdown in our customer service protocols. Bradley interjected smoothly. A terrible misunderstanding. The flight attendant misinterpreted standard procedures for accommodating passengers with special needs. Special needs? Marcus raised an eyebrow. The passenger who took my seat appeared perfectly able-bodied. In fact, he seemed particularly nimble when reaching for the champagne you served him. Mr. Wellington, Bradley's confident facade cracked slightly. You misunderstood. Richard Whitley is a long-standing platinum member with claustrophobia. We were simply discriminating based on race. Marcus completed calmly. But that's not why I'm here today. Kingston seized the opportunity to redirect. Exactly. We're here to finalize our partnership. Your team at Pinnacle has put together an impressive proposal, and we're eager to move forward with the $120 million capital injection. The meeting proceeded with presentations from SkyWest's CFO, detailing how Marcus's investment would transform their aging fleet, expand routes, and stabilize their rocky finances. Throughout, Marcus remained engaged and professional, asking incisive questions that demonstrated his deep understanding of their business. By the meeting's end, digital signatures had been applied to the preliminary agreement. Marcus would provide the initial $25 million immediately, with the remaining $95 million to follow upon finalization of terms. Kingston beamed as he shook Marcus's hand. This marks a turning point for SkyWest. We're thrilled to welcome Pinnacle as our newest investment partner. Marcus smiled. Before I leave, there's something I should mention. The room fell silent. The passenger you removed from first class today to accommodate Mr. Whitley, that was me. Kingston's smile collapsed. The legal counsel visibly flinched. Several executives exchanged alarmed glances. I was on SkyWest Flight 1876 this morning, seated in 2A, a seat I had reserved weeks ago. I was forcibly relocated to make room for Richard Whitley, apparently on Mr. Wellington's instructions. All eyes turned to Bradley, who struggled to maintain composure. That's a gross mischaracterization. The flight attendant made an independent decision based on what exactly? Marcus asked quietly. My appearance because the flight attendants were quite clear about receiving your specific instructions. Bradley's face wrined. That's absolutely false. This is clearly an attempt to leverage a minor customer service issue for financial advantage. Marcus turned to Kingston. The video has now been viewed 8 million times. Your company's stock has dropped 4% since market open. Would you still characterize this as minor? Kingston glared at Bradley before addressing Marcus. Mr. Daniels, I assure you, this incident does not reflect SkyWest's values. We will conduct a thorough investigation. I'm glad to hear that Marcus replied, rising from his seat. Because before the remaining $95 million changes hands, I'll need to see concrete evidence that SkyWest takes discrimination seriously. As Marcus turned to leave, Bradley called after him. This is unprofessional. You're mixing personal grievances with business. Marcus paused at the door. Mr. Wellington, when you had me removed from my seat this morning, you weren't seeing a CEO or an investor. You saw only the color of my skin and decided I didn't belong. That wasn't personal, it was structural, and addressing structural problems is very much my business. With that, Marcus departed, leaving a stunned boardroom behind him. As the elevator descended, he received a notification confirming the $25 million transfer had completed. For now, he would let that payment stand. The real leverage was yet to come. The hotel suite door closed behind Marcus with a soft click. Only then, in complete privacy, did he finally allow his shoulders to slump. The mask of calm confidence he'd maintained throughout the day cracked as he sank onto the edge of the bed, hands trembling slightly as the adrenaline ebbed. For several minutes, he sat motionless, processing the day's events. Then, with deliberate movements, he removed his tie, walked to the minibar and poured 3 fingers of bourbon. The amber liquid burned pleasantly as he took a long sip. His phone continued buzzing with notifications, journalists requesting comments. Social media mentions multiplying by the minute, messages from friends and colleagues who'd recognized him in the viral video. Marcus silenced them all. Instead, he moved to the window overlooking the city skyline. Memories flooding back unbidden. His mother walking him past exclusive restaurants in downtown Chicago, telling him, "Someday, Marcus, you'll eat wherever you want, and nobody will tell you that you don't belong." His first internship at Goldman Sachs, where a senior partner had mistaken him for janitorial staff. The countless times he'd been followed in high-end stores, the taxi drivers who'd passed him by to pick up white passengers. Each incident had been filed away, compartmentalized. Each had fueled his determination to succeed in spaces where people who looked like him were rarities. But today's public humiliation had torn open old wounds. Marcus finished his drink and dialed a familiar number. "I saw the video," Dr. Elijah Washington answered without preamble. "You okay, son?" Elijah had been Marcus's mentor since Harvard, one of the few black finance professors there in the early 2000s. Now in his 70s, Elijah remained Marcus's most trusted advisor. "I'm managing," Marcus replied, "but SkyWest just made a critical mistake. You still planning to invest? That depends on what happens next." Marcus said, "I'm trying to decide whether to walk away or use this as leverage for systemic change." "They're expecting you to be so grateful for their money that you'll swallow this insult," Elijah observed. "What they don't understand is that you've been swallowing these insults your entire career." "Exactly. But I'm thinking bigger than just an apology or sensitivity training." "Good. Because this has created an opportunity." Marcus nodded, though Elijah couldn't see him. The optics are catastrophic for them. Stock down 6% at closing, boycott calls trending. "What's your play?" Marcus outlined his emerging strategy, refining it as he talked through. The possibilities, Elijah asked, pointed questions exposing potential weaknesses, suggesting refinements. As they spoke, Marcus opened his laptop, reviewing the viral video for the first time. The footage was damning. His calm dignity contrasted sharply with the aggressive entitlement displayed by Richard Whitley and the thinly veiled threats from security. What struck him most was how familiar the scene looked to millions of viewers. The comments revealed a collective recognition. Every black professional has experienced some version of this. They did this to the wrong one this time. Watch how they'll try to paint him as the aggressor. Sky West PR team had posted a generic statement. "We're investigating the incident and take all customer concerns seriously." The response was being ratioed into oblivion with thousands of angry replies. After ending his call with Elijah, Marcus contacted his executive team at Pinnacle, conferencing in his chief operating officer Aisha Robinson and general counsel James. "Chen, I've seen healthier dumpster fires," Aisha remarked, after summarizing the social media situation. "Their stock is in free fall. 3 major corporate clients have already announced they're reviewing their Sky West contracts. What's our exposure if we pull out?" Marcus asked. James replied, "The agreement has a standard force majeure clause. We could potentially invoke reputational damage. This severe wasn't contemplated when we drafted the terms. We've transferred the initial $25 million. Marcus noted, "I want to freeze it immediately." "Consider it done," Aisha confirmed. "But Marcus, are you sure? This deal has been your focus for months. This isn't about the deal anymore," Marcus explained. "It's about accountability. Bradley Wellington has a history we need to investigate." Marcus tasked his team with discreet research into Bradley's past. Within hours, they'd uncovered 5 prior discrimination complaints against him, all quietly settled. Former employees reported a pattern of hostile behavior toward minorities. In leadership positions, he's been protected by the Old Boys Network. James concluded Walter Kingston has apparently been cleaning up Bradley's messes for years. As midnight approached, Marcus formulated a detailed strategy. He would use this moment not just for personal vindication, but to force structural change within an e-industry where discrimination remained commonplace. He drafted specific demands, a complete overhaul of Sky West's hiring and promotion practices, mandatory bias training with measurable outcomes, a diverse board expansion, and Bradley Wellington's removal. Finally, Marcus called his bank and issued a critical instruction: place a complete freeze on the $25 million transfer to Sky West Airline site, suspected fraudulent transaction. Within minutes, his phone rang. Walter Kingston himself. "Marcus, there seems to be an issue with the payment." Kingston began, his voice strained. "Yes, there is," Marcus replied calmly. "The issue is that your VP of Operations publicly humiliated me based on my race, endangered my physical safety by involving armed security, and deliberately sabotaged my luggage, all while I was en route to provide your company with $120 million, Marcus. I understand you're upset. I'm not upset, Walter. I'm calculating exactly how much institutional racism costs both for its victims and for those who perpetuate it." The line went silent for several seconds. When Kingston spoke again, his tone had changed. "What do you want?" "Justice." Marcus answered simply, "And accountability. My team will send specific terms tomorrow." After ending the call, Marcus stood at the window again, looking out at the city lights. For the first time since the incident, he felt centered in control. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to decide between walking away or fighting back? Comment number 1, if you believe Marcus is right to use his financial power to demand accountability. Hit that like button. If you've ever had to stand up against discrimination in your own life, and don't forget to subscribe to see how Sky West responds to Marcus freezing their $25 million. What would you do in Marcus's position? Would you pull your investment completely or use it as leverage for change? And what do you think Bradley Wellington will do now that his actions have cost his company millions? The battle is just beginning. By morning, Sky West stock had plummeted 12%. CNBC ran the headline, "Discrimination Incident Costs Airline 400 meters in market value overnight." Financial analysts questioned the company's culture and leadership. Several major corporate clients had publicly suspended their travel contracts pending investigation. Marcus watched from his hotel room as Walter Kingston held an emergency press conference, promising a thorough internal review and appropriate action. Bradley Wellington stood behind him, face carefully composed into an expression of corporate concern. We at Sky West have always valued diversity, Kingston declared, reading from a prepared statement. This unfortunate misunderstanding does not reflect our company values. Marcus's phone rang his media liaison. Good morning, sir. We've received interview requests from 63 news outlets, including all major networks. Decline them all for now, Marcus instructed. Let's see how Sky West responds to our terms first. His email pinged with a confidential communication from Kingston. Marcus, I've reviewed your demands. The bias training and hiring practice revisions are reasonable. However, removing Bradley Wellington is simply not feasible. He's been with the company 30 years and has significant board support. Can we discuss alternatives? Marcus didn't bother responding. The terms weren't negotiable. Meanwhile, Bradley Wellington was orchestrating his counteroffensive. In his corner office on the 36th floor, he convened a crisis meeting with Sky West's most influential board members and his personal allies in the industry. This is a calculated attack. Bradley insisted, pacing behind his desk. Daniels planned this from the beginning. Book a first-class seat, create an incident, then use it to extort concessions. The board members exchanged skeptical glances. Sandra Reeves, the most senior among them, spoke first. The video is pretty damning, Brad. He didn't create anything. Your buddy Richard Whitley is clearly visible, demanding the seat. The video shows a fraction of what happened. Bradley countered. Daniels was disruptive before filming started. Ask the crew, and will they corroborate that story under oath? Sandra pressed. Bradley ignored the question, pivoting to his prepared talking points. Here's what concerns me. Pinnacle Investments has a history of targeting transportation companies, creating controversy, then acquiring them at depressed values. They did it with Midwest Railroads last year. This caught the board's attention. Bradley displayed slides showing Pinnacle's acquisition history, carefully curated to suggest a predatory pattern. Marcus Daniels isn't some innocent victim. Bradley continued, he's a financial shark exploiting racial tensions to weaken us. His ultimate goal isn't investing, it's taking control of Sky West. By afternoon, Bradley's narrative began seeping into financial news coverage. A Bloomberg analyst questioned Pinnacle's opportunistic tactics. The Wall Street Journal ran a profile examining Marcus's aggressive acquisition strategy. Bradley didn't stop there. He contacted Richard Whitley, who sat on the boards of several companies where Pinnacle sought investment opportunities. Make some calls. Bradley instructed, let people know Daniels is unreliable, emotional, playing the race card to cover for financial weakness. Richard readily agreed. Within hours, rumors circulated through exclusive country clubs and private dining rooms that Pinnacle faced liquidity problems, that Marcus's emotional reaction suggested instability. 3 potential Pinnacle clients suddenly postponed scheduled meetings. A major bank placed their pending loan agreement under additional review. Marcus observed these developments with calm calculation. He'd anticipated Bradley's counterattack. It followed the predictable playbook used against minorities who challenged power structures. His team reported each new rumor, each canceled meeting, each subtle shift in the financial community's reception. Marcus listened without surprise. They're saying Pinnacle is over-leveraged, Aisha reported during their evening briefing. 2 hedge funds have reduced their positions in our managed funds. Bradley's fingerprints are all over this. James added, he's activating his network systematically. Marcus nodded. Exactly as expected. How's our financial position? Rock solid, Aisha confirmed. We've got contingency liquidity for precisely this scenario and the Sky West situation. Kingston's desperate James reported their Q2 projections required your investment. Without it, they'll miss earnings targets catastrophically. Marcus opened his laptop, reviewing a secure folder labeled Wellington Files. His investigators had been busy compiling Bradley's history of discriminatory behavior. 5 separate incidents of black executives being undermined, reassigned, or forced out. 2 female VPs who'd left after interactions with Bradley. Multiple complaints buried through settlements with non-disclosure agreements. But the most damning evidence had arrived that afternoon. Security camera footage from the Sky West gate showing Bradley explicitly instructing the crew to remove Marcus from his seat. As Marcus reviewed these materials, his secure phone line rang a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Daniels, this is Heather Stevens, the flight attendant from yesterday's flight." "Marcus," straightened Miss Stevens. "I appreciate you reaching out. What they did was wrong," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Mr. Wellington ordered us to remove you specifically. He said to create a disturbance if necessary, anything to get you out of first class before takeoff. Are you willing to provide a statement confirming this?" A pause. "I could lose my job." "I understand the risk," Marcus acknowledged. "But this is bigger than one incident or one company." Heather hesitated. "Can I think about it? They're monitoring us closely right now. Of course, my legal team can ensure you're protected if you decide to come forward." After the call, Marcus received an urgent alert from his security team. Threat assessment elevated. Multiple doxing attempts detected racial slurs and threats appearing on fringe forums. Recommend enhanced security protocols. Bradley's counteroffensive had expanded beyond financial circles. Hate groups had picked up the story, casting Marcus as a threat to traditional American business values. Death threats arrived at Pinnacle's headquarters. Marcus's home address was posted online. His elderly mother received harassing calls. That evening, Bradley seemed to gain the upper hand. A financial blog published doctored photos appearing to show Marcus acting aggressively on the flight, though quickly debunked the images spread widely on certain platforms. Simultaneously, Bradley accessed Pinnacle's confidential client data through a sophisticated corporate espionage operation, identifying vulnerable relationships he could target. Marcus received the most alarming news just before midnight. Security breach detected Wellington accessing private Pinnacle files through third-party contractors. Sensitive client information compromised. Bradley had crossed into illegal territory. A desperate move from someone who sensed he was losing control. Marcus called an emergency meeting with his executive team. Bradley's getting reckless. He's breaking laws now. Should we involve federal authorities?" James asked. "Not yet." Marcus replied, "Let's gather conclusive evidence first." That night, as Marcus finally prepared for sleep, CNN Breaking News announced SkyWest CEO issues statements supporting VP Bradley Wellington. Questions, motives behind viral video. Kingston had chosen sides. The corporate machine was closing ranks. What initially seemed like a clear case of discrimination caught on video was being systematically reframed as a calculated attack by Marcus. The playbook was familiar. Discredit the victim. Question their motives. Protect the system. Marcus turned off the television. Oddly calm. He'd expected this phase, the moment when power structures reveal their self-protective reflexes. "Your move, Bradley," he murmured to the darkened room. "Keep digging your hole deeper." Dawn found Marcus already at work in a secure conference room he'd established in a different hotel. He'd relocated overnight as a security precaution, leaving no digital trail. The room now functioned as Pinnacle's command center for Operation Accountability, their internal code name for the SkyWest. Response. "Good morning, Team." Marcus greeted his assembled specialists as they connected through encrypted video conference. "Status updates. Please, Maya Chen, head of Pinnacle's newly formed investigative unit, began. We've identified 17 former SkyWest employees who experienced discrimination under Bradley Wellington's leadership. 7 are willing to speak on record." "Excellent." Marcus nodded. James' legal position. James Chen, appearing slightly disheveled after working through the night, straightened his tie. "We've documented 46 regulatory violations at SkyWest over the past 3 years, all under Bradley's operational oversight. FAA filing prepared if needed." Marcus turned to his cybersecurity expert, Rahul. "Where are we on the data breach?" "Confirmed. Wellington used Clearview Securities to access our systems." Rahul reported they targeted client files specifically. "We've secured everything and implemented honeypot traps. Fake datasets they'll think are valuable, but will actually help us trace their activities." "Perfect." Marcus approved, and Aisha, his COO, appeared on screen from Pinnacle's New York headquarters, financial containment proceeding well. Wellington's whisper campaign damaged us with 3 clients, but we've retained 18 others after direct outreach. Our liquidity position remains strong. As the meeting progressed, Marcus received a text from an unknown number. Need to talk? Not safe on phone. Coffee shop across from Hotel 30. Men's HS Heather Stevens. After concluding the meeting, Marcus contacted his security team. I need a public location sweep and escort possible informant meeting 20 minutes later with security personnel positioned discreetly around the coffee shop. Marcus sat at a corner table back to the wall with clear sight lines to all entrances. Heather arrived looking exhausted, constantly glancing over her shoulder. She slid into the seat across from him without ordering, "I can't stay long." She began, voice barely above a whisper. "They're watching us. Flight crew who might support you are being reassigned to international routes, effectively silenced. Thank you for taking this risk." Marcus said sincerely. Heather placed a USB drive on the table. "It's all here. Recordings of Bradley's instructions before your flight, documentation of other incidents, internal emails about passenger reclassification based on appearance." Her hand trembled. "There's a pattern. It's not just you." "This is incredibly brave, Heather. They're trying to buy my silence." She confessed Bradley offered a promotion to international first-class routes if I sign a statement saying you were disruptive. "And if you don't sign, I'll be downsized in the next round of cuts." She checked her watch nervously. "I have to go. My supervisor thinks I'm at a doctor's appointment." As Heather rose to leave, she added, "Check the recording from March 15th. Another black executive's similar situation, Bradley called it seat reclamation in his email. With the USB secure, Marcus returned to the command center. The evidence Heather provided proved invaluable detailed documentation of numerous discrimination incidents, all bearing Bradley Wellington's digital fingerprints. Most damning was a recording of Bradley instructing Heather before Marcus's flight. "I don't care what his boarding pass says. Find a reason to move him. Richard Whitley needs that seat, and he doesn't want to sit next to, well, you know, make it happen." Marcus's team worked methodically correlating Heather's evidence with complaints they'd independently gathered. A clear pattern emerged at least 9 instances where non-white passengers with first-class tickets had been reaccommodated when certain VIPs requested their seats. By mid-afternoon, Marcus received a concerning update from his security team. "Subject Wellington has contacted Clearview Securities again. Surveillance indicates possible targeting of Stevens' Heather." Marcus immediately dispatched protection for Heather and alerted her to the threat. Hours later, his caution proved justified when Heather called, badly shaken. "Someone broke into my apartment." She reported, "Nothing taken, but my personal files were searched and my work laptop is missing. Are you safe now?" "Yes, your security team arrived quickly. They're relocating me." Meanwhile, Bradley grew increasingly desperate. Having failed to silence Heather, he attempted to bribe another flight attendant who had witnessed the incident. When that failed, he resorted to more extreme measures. Late that evening, Marcus's lead investigator, Derek Washington, was driving back from interviewing a former SkyWest executive when an SUV forced him off the road. He escaped with minor injuries, but the message was clear. The stakes had escalated beyond professional reputations. This wasn't random. Derek insisted from his hospital bed, a bandage covering his forehead laceration. "The driver knew exactly who I was and what I was working on." Marcus flew Derek's family in for support and doubled security for everyone involved in the investigation. What had begun as a case of discrimination had evolved into something more sinister. The next morning, Marcus received a call from Walter Kingston. "Marcus, this has gone far enough." Kingston began, his voice betraying stress. "Let's resolve this situation. Like businessmen. SkyWest is prepared to offer you a seat on our board plus a substantial settlement if you'll release the frozen funds and sign an NDA. Walter, this stopped being a business matter the moment your VP endangered my safety." Marcus replied, Now it's about accountability. Bradley made a mistake. Not a mistake, a choice. One he's made repeatedly based on the evidence we've gathered. Kingston's tone, hardened evidence, or a disgruntled employee with an agenda. Multiple employees, multiple. Incidents plus security footage, emails, and recordings, Marcus countered. The pattern is undeniable. These allegations could seriously damage. They already have Walter, and they'll continue to until you address the root cause. After hanging up, Marcus noticed a new development online. Bradley had apparently decided on a public reversal of strategy. SkyWest released a statement claiming their internal investigation had revealed Marcus was disruptive and had voluntarily moved to economy after being offered compensation. This blatant lie might have worked in the pre-social media era, but dozens of passengers had filmed the incident, and their footage contradicted every aspect of SkyWest's statement. The airline's credibility collapsed further as independent journalists began connecting the dots between Marcus's case and other discrimination incidents. Bradley's history of problematic behavior became front-page news. Yet Bradley remained defiant, telling CNBC, "This is a targeted campaign by Pinnacle. Investments to devalue SkyWest for acquisition." Marcus Daniels is playing the race card to distract from his predatory business tactics. That evening, as Marcus reviewed the day's developments, he received an unexpected message from Sandra Reeves, the senior SkyWest board member. "This has gone too far. Some of us want to talk privately." For the first time since the incident, Marcus sensed a fracture in SkyWest's united front. Bradley's increasingly reckless tactics were alienating his own allies. "Gather everyone," Marcus instructed his team. "It's time to present our evidence to select board members. Bradley's making critical errors. Let's capitalize on them. We're live in 5:43. The producer silently mouthed the final countdown as Marcus Daniels sat across from veteran news anchor Catherine Reynolds in CNN's studio. The red light illuminated on the camera, and Catherine turned to face the viewing audience of millions. "Good evening tonight. We're joined by Marcus Daniels, CEO of Pinnacle Investments, who found himself at the center of a viral discrimination incident aboard a SkyWest Airlines flight last week. Mr. Daniels, thank you for being here." "Thank you for having me, Catherine." Marcus replied, his posture relaxed yet dignified in his perfectly tailored navy suit. For those who haven't seen the video, though, at nearly 30 million views, that's increasingly few people. Can you walk us through what happened? With measured precision, Marcus recounted the events, neither embellishing nor downplaying the humiliation he'd experienced. His calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the outrageous treatment he described. What's most concerning, he concluded, is that this wasn't an isolated incident. We've uncovered a pattern of similar discrimination at SkyWest, particularly involving Bradley Wellington, their VP of Operations. "SkyWest has claimed you were being disruptive." Catherine noted, "How do you respond?" "The videos speak for themselves," Marcus replied simply. "Multiple passengers recorded the incident from different angles. None show any disruptive behavior on my part, and the financial aspect, you've frozen a $25 million payment to SkyWest. Yes, Pinnacle cannot in good conscience invest in a company that permits systemic discrimination. We've presented SkyWest with specific structural changes required before we proceed with our investment." As the interview continued, Marcus struck a perfect balance, professional yet passionate, firm yet reasonable. He didn't appear angry or vindictive, but rather determined to create meaningful change. The impact was immediate. "Hold SkyWest accountable" began trending before the interview even concluded. SkyWest's stock, which had briefly stabilized that morning, plunged another 8% in after-hours trading. Back in his hotel room, Marcus watched as major corporate clients publicly suspended their SkyWest contracts. The airline's once reliable government contracts came under review. Travel sites added consumer warnings to SkyWest bookings. His phone rang. "Aisha with an update. Your interview destroyed them. Kingston's office has been calling every 15 minutes. The board is in emergency session. And Bradley, doubling down, he scheduled his own interview tomorrow morning on Fox Business. Marcus nodded to himself. Perfect. Let him keep talking. The following morning, Bradley Wellington appeared on screen, dressed in an expensive but slightly ill-fitting suit. His complexion flushed despite professional makeup. This is a calculated attack. Bradley insisted when asked about the incident. Marcus Daniels deliberately created this situation to lower our stock value. Oh, Pinnacle has a history of these tactics, the interviewer pressed, but the video clearly shows. The video doesn't show what happened before filming started. Bradley interrupted. Daniels was argumentative with our crew. He refused reasonable accommodation offers. When questioned about the discrimination allegations, Bradley became defensive. I find it offensive that any time a person of color doesn't get exactly what they want, they immediately claim discrimination. SkyWest has an exemplary diversity record. The performance was disastrous. Bradley appeared evasive, entitled, and increasingly agitated. By contrast, Marcus's composed interview continued gaining positive attention across the political spectrum. SkyWest's crisis deepened hourly. Bradley's Fox interview spawned new memes and video compilations, contrasting his claims with footage from the plane. Celebrity influencers voiced support. For Marcus, a major civil rights organization, announced plans to investigate SkyWest's practices by midday. SkyWest's market capitalization had lost over $800 million since the incident began, more than 6 times Marcus's frozen investment. Yet Bradley wasn't finished. Through his country club connections, he planted a story in the New York Post suggesting Marcus had a sealed criminal record. Though completely fabricated, the story gained traction in certain circles. "They're getting desperate," James observed during their strategy call, "but it's having some impact." 2 institutional investors called asking about these rumors. Marcus remained unfazed. Expected Bradley's following the classic playbook: when facts aren't on your side, attack the victim's character. His media team monitored the situation carefully, noting which outlets amplified Bradley's false claims and which pursued factual reporting. They strategically released supporting evidence to trusted journalists, gradually building an irrefutable public case. Another opportunity presented itself when a prominent black business podcast requested Marcus as a guest. Rather than focusing solely on the incident, Marcus used the platform to discuss broader issues of discrimination in corporate America and his vision for change. "This isn't about one flight or one airline," he explained thoughtfully. "It's about accountability in spaces where discrimination has long been normalized. When I started Pinnacle, I committed to using our financial leverage for positive change. This is part of that mission." The podcast went viral, particularly among business students and young professionals. Business for Change began trending with thousands, sharing stories of discrimination they'd experienced or witnessed in corporate settings. Bradley's counteroffensive continued deteriorating. His attempt to distract from the main issues with character attacks only heightened public interest in the evidence Marcus's team was systematically releasing. The most damaging blow came when 3 major celebrities shared their own negative experiences on SkyWest flights, specifically mentioning Bradley Wellington's involvement. Their combined social media reach exceeded 50 million followers. SkyWest's corporate clients continued abandoning ship. Ticket sales plummeted. The company announced emergency cost-cutting measures, including route reductions and potential layoffs. Yet the most troubling development for Marcus was personal. His family began receiving threats. His elderly mother's home address was published on extremist forums. His college-age nephew was harassed on campus. Marcus immediately arranged comprehensive security for all family members, but the emotional toll was significant. That night, for the first time since the incident began, doubt crept in. Was the cost of this principled stand becoming too high? A call from Elijah Washington studied him. "They're targeting your family because they're losing on the merits," his mentor observed. This is how power protects itself, by making the personal cost of challenging it unbearable. "I know," Marcus acknowledged, "but knowing doesn't make it easier. Nothing worthwhile ever is." Elijah replied, "Remember why you started Pinnacle in the first place." Marcus did remember. He'd founded Pinnacle, not just to create wealth, but to transform spaces where people like him had traditionally been excluded. Each investment carried that mission. The next morning, Marcus appeared at a press conference with the families of 7 other individuals who had experienced similar discrimination on SkyWest flights. Their collective testimony painted a devastating picture of systematic bias. The media landscape had completely shifted. What Bradley had tried to frame as one man's vengeful campaign was now clearly revealed as a pattern of corporate discrimination affecting dozens of people. That evening, Marcus received word that several SkyWest board members had requested private meetings separate from Kingston or Bradley. The tide was turning. Have you ever witnessed a company try to cover up wrongdoing instead of addressing it? Comment number 1. If you think corporations should be held accountable for discrimination, hit that like button if you believe financial power can be used for positive social change. Subscribe to see how the SkyWest board responds to the mounting pressure. What do you think will happen next? Will Bradley finally face consequences for his actions, or will corporate connections protect him once again? And how far will he go to silence those speaking out against him? The battle for justice is reaching its climax. The imposing federal courthouse dominated the skyline, its neoclassical columns standing as silent witnesses to countless battles for justice. Today, those columns would witness another SkyWest Airlines versus Pinnacle Investments, an emergency hearing on SkyWest's motion to force the release of the frozen $25 million Marcus Daniels sat beside his legal team, watching as SkyWest's attorneys arranged their materials at the opposing table. Bradley Wellington and Walter Kingston occupied prime positions behind their lawyers, Bradley leaning forward to whisper instructions. While Kingston appeared increasingly haggarded, Judge Raymond Harrington entered a Reagan appointee with 30 years on the bench. His reputation for strict adherence to contract law had initially concerned. Marcus's team court is now in session. The bailiff announced the Honorable Judge Raymond Harrington presiding SkyWest's lead counsel. Elizabeth Morgan rose first. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward contract dispute. Pinnacle Investments signed a binding agreement to provide capital investment to SkyWest Airlines. The initial payment of $25 million was processed, then illegally reversed by Mr. Daniels in a vindictive response to a minor customer service issue. Judge Harrington peered over his glasses, and the basis for freezing the funds, Mr. Chen James. Chen stood force majeure, Your Honor. The contract contained standard provisions allowing suspension of obligations under extraordinary circumstances. Mr. Daniels was physically removed from his rightful seat based on racial discrimination by SkyWest executives, specifically Mr. Wellington, creating conditions that fundamentally altered the relationship between the parties." Elizabeth Morgan scoffed, hardly force majeure. Mr. Daniels was politely reaccommodated following standard airline protocols. He's attempting to leverage an ordinary flight incident into contractual advantage. Judge Harrington frowned. "Ms. Morgan, I've seen the videos, like everyone else. That was no ordinary incident. However, the question before this court is whether it constitutes grounds for withholding contractually obligated funds." For the next 2 hours, arguments flew back and forth. SkyWest presented carefully selected testimony from flight attendants who claimed Marcus had been uncooperative. They submitted statements from passengers who hadn't witnessed the beginning of the confrontation but heard raised voices. When Bradley Wellington took the stand, he projected confident authority. "Mr. Daniels has manufactured this controversy to extort concessions from SkyWest." He testified smoothly. "Our flight crew made a routine seating adjustment based on operational needs. Mr. Daniels became confrontational, necessitating security involvement." During cross-examination, James methodically dismantled Bradley's narrative, highlighting inconsistencies between his testimony and the video evidence. Yet Judge Harrington seemed unmoved, asking questions that suggested sympathy with SkyWest's position. As Marcus watched, he noticed subtle exchanges between Bradley and the judge. A shared glance, a slight nod. Something felt off. During a recess, Marcus whispered to James, "The judge knows Bradley." James nodded imperceptibly. Research team just confirmed. Same country club Harrington's son interned at SkyWest last summer in Bradley's department. Should we request recusal? Too late, it would antagonize him further. Best strategy now is to build an ironclad record for appeal. When proceedings resumed, SkyWest's legal team introduced a new claim. They presented doctored email chains suggesting Marcus had planned to withhold payment regardless of his flight experience. Objection. James called. These documents are fabricated. Strong accusation counselor Judge Harrington admonished. Do you have proof? We can present metadata evidence showing these emails were created yesterday. James replied. Judge Harrington waved dismissively. Submit your technical evidence later. For now, these documents are admitted. By late afternoon, the pattern was unmistakable. Judge Harrington systematically favored SkyWest's arguments while finding procedural reasons to exclude Pinnacle's strongest evidence. Then came the most damaging blow. The judge ruled that Heather Stevens' testimony was inadmissible on a technicality. Her employment contract contained an arbitration clause that SkyWest argued prevented her from testifying in federal court. Without Heather's direct account of Bradley's instructions, Marcus's case weakened substantially. James fought valiantly against each adverse ruling, but Judge Harrington seemed determined to rule for SkyWest. As the court day ended, Judge Harrington announced, I'll issue my ruling tomorrow morning at 9:00. Based on today's proceedings, I'm inclined to grant SkyWest's motion and order the immediate release of funds. The courtroom began emptying. Bradley caught Marcus's eye across the room, his expression triumphant. Nothing personal. He mouthed silently, his smile revealing it was in fact deeply personal. Outside, the courthouse reporters swarmed. Kingston made a brief statement expressing confidence in the legal process, while Bradley added, Truth prevails over social media manipulation. SkyWest looks forward to putting this manufactured controversy behind us. In his legal team's temporary war room at a nearby hotel, Marcus absorbed the implications. If Harrington rules against us tomorrow, what's our exposure? James grimaced. Beyond the $25 million, there's potential for damages, legal fees, and reputational harm. More concerning, it creates precedent that could undermine discrimination cases industry-wide. Marcus paced the room, thinking through options. If the system is rigged, we need to change the venue. Appeal will take months. James cautioned, I'm not talking about legal venues. Marcus turned to Aisha. Prepare for maximum media transparency. If Harrington rules against us, we release everything, all evidence, all testimony, all connections between Bradley and the judge. That's nuclear, James warned. It could backfire. So be it, Marcus replied. This stopped being about money the moment they called security to remove me from that seat. Later that night, as Marcus reviewed court transcripts, his phone rang an unlisted number, Mr. Daniels. It's Sandra Reeves from Sky West's board. Miss Reeves, bold of you to call during active litigation. This has gone too far, she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. Several of us on the board just learned about Bradley's connection to Judge Harrington. We didn't authorize this manipulation yet. You benefited from it. Today, Marcus observed. Some victories aren't worth their cost, Sandra replied cryptically. Check your email in 15 minutes. The email arrived exactly on schedule. Internal SkyWest communications, revealing Bradley had personally selected Judge Harrington's courtroom through procedural maneuvers, along with evidence of their long-standing personal relationship. Marcus immediately forwarded everything to James, who called within minutes. This changes everything, James said. We can file for emergency recusal first thing tomorrow, too late for tomorrow's ruling. Probably, James admitted, but perfect for appeal and potentially for a judicial misconduct investigation. Marcus ended the call staring out his hotel window at the city lights. Tomorrow's ruling would likely go against Pinnacle, a tactical law strategically engineered by Bradley Wellington across town. Bradley was undoubtedly celebrating his apparent victory. But in the complex chess game they were playing, Marcus had just gained something far more valuable than a favorable ruling. He'd exposed corruption at the heart of the system. Bradley relied upon for protection. The real battle was just beginning. The ruling came down exactly as expected. Judge Harrington ordered the immediate release of the frozen funds, plus punitive damages for contractual interference. His written opinion contained language that could have been drafted by SkyWest's legal team, dismissing discrimination claims as opportunistic leverage tactics. Bradley Wellington's victory lap began immediately. SkyWest's PR team issued triumphant statements about vindication and justice served. Financial analysts upgraded the airline stock, which rebounded 7% by midday. Bradley himself appeared on CNBC projecting gracious magnanimity. While we're pleased with the court's decision, SkyWest remains committed to addressing any legitimate concerns about our customer service. He stated smoothly, "We hope Mr. Daniels will now honor his contractual obligations so both companies can move forward productively." The carefully crafted narrative seemed to be working. Market sentiment shifted perceptibly as commentators questioned whether the viral incident had been overblown. Several publications ran features examining trial by social media and the dangers of rushing to judgment. Marcus watched these developments from a secure location, having moved again after receiving credible security threats. His team had anticipated this shift and prepared accordingly. Judge Harrington gave them exactly what they wanted. James reported, "We've already filed our appeal and judicial misconduct complaint. How long until those are heard?" Marcus asked. "Months. Potentially the system works slowly, which benefits those already in power." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Then we accelerate." Their strategic pivot began subtly. First, Marcus's team released documentation of Judge Harrington's connections to Bradley Wellington, not through press statements, but through secure channels to trusted investigative journalists. The evidence included photographs of them golfing together weeks before the hearing and records of text messages discussing the case. By evening, judicial ethics experts were appearing on news programs questioning the legitimacy of Harrington's ruling. The legal victory Bradley had been celebrating suddenly appeared tainted, but the true turning point came unexpectedly. As Marcus reviewed strategy with his team, his secure line rang. "Heather Stevens, they're coming after me." She began without preamble, her voice shaking. "Bradley offered me a promotion to international routes if I sign a statement contradicting my previous testimony. When I refused, he threatened to fire me for performance issues. They suddenly discovered, 'Are you safe?' Marcus asked immediately, 'For now.' But there's more. Bradley approached another flight attendant, Lisa Corman, with the same offer she recorded him. Explicit threats. Explicit instructions to lie about what happened on your flight. Is she willing to come forward?" "Yes, but she's terrified." Bradley told her he has friends in law enforcement who could cause problems for her brother, who has a minor record. "We can provide protection for both of you," Marcus assured her. "My security team will contact you within the hour." By midnight, Heather Stevens and Lisa Corman had been relocated to secure accommodations. Lisa's recording of Bradley's intimidation attempt was devastating. Clear evidence of witness tampering, a federal offense. The next morning, Marcus's team made their boldest move yet. Rather than releasing the recording through media channels, they submitted it directly to the FBI's Public Corruption Unit, along with comprehensive documentation of Bradley's pattern of discrimination, witness intimidation, and now evidence of judicial tampering. Simultaneously, they connected Heather with producers from 60 Minutes, who had been investigating airline industry discrimination for months. The resulting interview was scheduled to air Sunday evening. Maximum viewership for maximum impact. Bradley, sensing the shifting momentum, grew increasingly desperate. Through his connections, he gained access to Pinnacle's confidential client database, planting evidence suggesting financial irregularities in Marcus's dealings with federal contracts. Within hours, an anonymous whistleblower had filed complaints with the SEC and FBI, triggering preliminary investigations into Pinnacle's business practices. News of these investigations leaked strategically to financial media, creating renewed pressure on Marcus's company. What Bradley hadn't anticipated was that Marcus had expected precisely this move, months earlier foreseeing potential battles with entrenched interests. Marcus had implemented extraordinary security protocols for all Pinnacle systems. Each access attempt, each file interaction was meticulously logged with blockchain verification. The fabricated evidence Bradley planted was digitally watermarked through these security measures, creating irrefutable proof of corporate espionage and false, reporting to federal agencies both serious felonies. As the 60 Minutes interview approached, tension escalated dramatically. Heather received anonymous threats, warning her against appearing. Lisa's brother was suddenly arrested on a minor traffic violation and held without bail. Bradley thought he was sending warnings. Instead, he was building the case against himself. The Sunday broadcast proved catastrophic for SkyWest. Heather Stevens, poised and credible, detailed Bradley's systematic discrimination policies. Lisa Corman played the damning recording of his intimidation attempts. 6 other former employees shared similar experiences, creating an overwhelming picture of a toxic culture emanating directly from Bradley Wellington. The final segment featured an aerospace industry expert analyzing SkyWest's safety record under Bradley's operational leadership, identifying concerning patterns of cost-cutting that potentially compromised passenger safety. Public reaction was immediate and overwhelming. SkyWest's stock plummeted 20% in pre-market trading. Major institutional shareholders issued statements demanding board action. The hashtag boycott SkyWest trended globally. More significantly, the FBI confirmed an active investigation into allegations of witness tampering and obstruction of justice related to recent litigation involving SkyWest Airlines. Bradley responded with his most desperate gambit yet. Through manipulated evidence and his law enforcement connections, he orchestrated a raid on Pinnacle's New York offices based on the fabricated financial irregularities he'd planted. The images of FBI agents removing boxes from Pinnacle headquarters hit financial news within minutes of the raid beginning. Pinnacle stock dropped precipitously as investors reacted to the apparent confirmation of wrongdoing. Marcus, who had anticipated even this extreme tactic, remained calm. "Let the process play out," he instructed his concerned executive team. "We've documented everything, the truth will emerge." But privately, he recognized the escalating stakes. Bradley had moved beyond professional combat into potential criminal territory. The risk to Marcus's company reputation and personal freedom had grown exponentially. That evening, as Marcus prepared for an emergency investor call to address the raid, breaking news flashed across his screen. SkyWest executive Bradley Wellington named as target in federal corruption probe. The FBI, upon examining the evidence Marcus had submitted, had quickly recognized the planted nature of the evidence against Pinnacle. The investigation had pivoted to focus on Bradley's actions. Within hours, the narrative completely reversed. Financial news analyzed how Bradley had apparently manipulated federal agencies to target a business rival. Legal experts discussed the potential charges: witness tampering, obstruction of justice, corporate espionage, false statements to federal investigators. As dawn broke, Marcus received word that Walter Kingston had called an emergency board meeting at SkyWest. The walls were closing in on Bradley Wellington, but Bradley had one final card to play, one last desperate attempt to silence his accusers. Marcus Daniels stood before Pinnacle's assembled employees, projecting calm confidence despite the company's tumultuous week. The FBI had publicly clarified that Pinnacle was not the target of their investigation, but the market remained jittery, their stock still down 12%. "I know the past few days have created uncertainty," Marcus acknowledged. But I can assure you, Pinnacle stands on solid ground both financially and ethically. What we're experiencing is the backlash that often comes when challenging entrenched power. As he spoke, his chief security officer approached, discreetly passing him a handwritten note. Offshore accounts discovered Wellington moving assets. Call immediately, Marcus concluded his remarks and retreated to his office where his investigative team waited with extraordinary findings. We followed the money, Maya Chen began. Without preamble, Bradley Wellington has been operating a complex network of offshore accounts for over a decade. Most significantly, he holds a concealed 5% ownership stake in Clearview Securities, the same firm he hired for corporate espionage against us, that creates a direct financial connection to the illegal access of our systems. Marcus observed, exactly. But there's more. We've identified payments from Wellington's Cayman accounts to individuals connected to recent intimidation attempts against Heather Stevens and Lisa Corman. Criminal conspiracy, James noted. Federal prosecutors will be very interested. The evidence was comprehensive. Wellington had maintained meticulously hidden financial structures to conceal conflicts of interest, kickbacks from vendors, and payments for various forms of coercion. His apparent wealth came not just from his Sky West salary, but from systematically exploiting his position for personal gain. Most damning is this. Maya continued displaying financial records. Wellington received substantial payments coinciding with Sky West decisions to deny promotions to minority executives who filed discrimination complaints. He was being paid to maintain the status quo. Marcus realized to keep certain people out of leadership. The team compiled their findings into a comprehensive report which they provided simultaneously to the FBI, SEC, and Department of Justice. The evidence was too substantial, too well demented to ignore. Meanwhile, at Sky West headquarters, Bradley Wellington was fighting for his professional life. The emergency board meeting had stretched into its 6th hour, with Bradley maintaining his innocence against mounting evidence. This is a calculated attack by Daniels Bradley. Insisted he's manipulating federal agencies just like he manipulated social media. Sandra Reeves, who had emerged as Bradley's most vocal critic on the board, responded coldly. The FBI doesn't launch investigations based on Twitter trends. Bradley, they have evidence. Evidence you've been unable to refute. This company stood by you through the initial incident. Walter Kingston added, his former ally now visibly distancing himself. We accepted your explanation that Daniels was being difficult. We supported you through the public backlash, but witness intimidation offshore accounts. This goes far beyond a seating dispute. As pressure mounted in the boardroom, Bradley's composure began cracking. His carefully constructed professional persona, polished, measured, authoritative, gave way to flashes of the raw entitlement and anger that had driven his actions against Marcus. You have no idea what it takes to keep an airline running. He shouted at one point, sometimes difficult decisions are necessary. Sometimes people get upset, but we do what needs to be done. The board watched in stunned silence as Bradley's true character emerged. Is that what this was about? Sandra asked, quietly, making difficult decisions about who belongs in first class based on their appearance. Outside the boardroom, the situation deteriorated further. Heather Stevens appeared on multiple news programs, joined by an expanding group of current and former Sky West employees testifying to systematic discrimination. Their stories were specific, credible, and devastating. One former executive detailed how Bradley had blocked her promotion, explicitly stating, "Our premium customers aren't comfortable with certain types in leadership positions." A ground operations manager described Bradley's instructions to give extra scrutiny to passengers who don't look like they belong in first class. The cumulative effect was overwhelming. Sky West's market capitalization had lost over $1 billion. Major corporate clients had suspended their contracts indefinitely. The Department of Transportation announced a comprehensive review of the airline's compliance with anti-discrimination regulations. Bradley's position became untenable when financial news outlets began reporting on his offshore accounts and hidden conflicts of interest. Questions about potential criminal exposure created liability concerns the board couldn't ignore. "We need to address this immediately," Kingston announced, ending hours of deliberation. "The board will vote on Bradley's termination for cause, sensing defeat." Bradley made a final desperate play. "If I go down, I'm not going alone." He pulled out his phone, displaying emails and text messages. "Walter knew everything, approved my handling of passenger reassignments years ago. He specifically told me to keep Daniels out of first class that day." The boardroom erupted in chaos. Kingston vehemently denied the allegations, while Bradley produced increasingly damning communications showing leadership's complicity and discriminatory practices. As the board descended into accusatory chaos, federal agents arrived with warrants to search Bradley's office and electronic devices. Tipped off by a sympathetic executive assistant, Bradley attempted to delete incriminating files and communications before they could be seized. This desperate act of evidence destruction was captured by security cameras, providing prosecutors with clear obstruction of justice charges regardless of the underlying investigation's outcome. By evening, the situation had reached its breaking point. The board voted unanimously to terminate Bradley Wellington for cause effective immediately. SkyWest issued a public statement distancing itself from his actions and pledging full cooperation with federal investigators. Marcus received this news while meeting with his expanded legal team to coordinate their response to the rapidly evolving situation. The termination represented a significant victory, but fell far short of the structural change required. "They're scapegoating Bradley to save the institution," Marcus observed. "Same playbook we've seen countless times. Sacrifice one person while protecting the system that enabled them." His suspicions were confirmed when Walter Kingston held a press conference characterizing Bradley as a rogue executive whose actions in no way reflected SkyWest's values or policies. "I find it telling." Marcus commented to his team that Kingston is more outraged by Bradley's financial improprieties than by his systematic discrimination. One threatened the company's money, the other merely harmed human beings, as Bradley Wellington faced the professional and legal consequences of his actions. Marcus focused on the bigger picture. Bradley was a symptom of a deeper disease, a corporate culture that tolerated or even rewarded discrimination, as long as it remained discreet. "We don't just want Bradley Wellington removed," Marcus told his team. "We want systems that prevent the next Bradley Wellington from gaining power in the first place." The final revelation came unexpectedly. Among the documents federal agents seized from Bradley's office was a confidential memo from Walter Kingston, dated 3 years earlier, outlining a passenger comfort strategy that included specific protocols for managing cabin demographics on premium routes. Kingston had not merely tolerated Bradley's discriminatory practices, he had helped create them 6 weeks after the incident that sparked the controversy. Marcus Daniels stood before a very different SkyWest board. Gone was Bradley Wellington, now facing federal charges for witness tampering, obstruction of justice, and financial crimes. Gone, too, was Walter Kingston, forced to resign after his role in establishing discriminatory policies became public. Sandra Reeves, elevated to interim CEO, had requested this meeting personally. Beside her sat 5 new board members appointed as part of SkyWest's comprehensive restructuring. "Thank you for agreeing to meet Mr. Daniels." Sandra began. "We've spent weeks conducting an unflinching examination of SkyWest's culture and practices. What we found was deeply troubling systemic issues far beyond one executive's actions." She slid a document across the table. SkyWest's newly adopted anti-discrimination and inclusion framework, a comprehensive overhaul of hiring, promotion training, and customer service protocols. This represents our commitment to meaningful change. Sandra continued. "We've established measurable benchmarks, transparent reporting, and executive compensation tied directly to diversity outcomes." Marcus reviewed the document carefully. It contained many of the specific reforms he'd proposed, plus additional measures developed through consultation with civil rights organizations and industry experts. Impressive, he acknowledged. But policies are only as effective as their implementation, which is why we're here. Sandra replied, Sky West is formally requesting that Pinnacle reconsider its investment position under substantially revised terms. The new proposal outlined a transformed relationship. Pinnacle would receive expanded equity stake and board representation, including permanent seats on Sky West's ethics and compensation committees. Most significantly, the airline would establish an independent oversight council with authority to investigate discrimination complaints and recommend binding remedial actions. This isn't just about your capital investment, Sandra explained. We need partners who will hold us accountable during this transformation. Who better than the person who exposed our failures so publicly? Marcus studied the faces around the Dots table, where Bradley and Kingston had projected entitlement and condescension. These executives showed something unfamiliar in his dealings with Sky West, genuine humility. I'll need time to review these terms with my team, Marcus replied, but I'm cautiously optimistic about the direction you're taking. The following days brought further evidence of Sky West's commitment to change. The airline announced comprehensive anti-discrimination training for all employees developed in partnership with leading civil rights organizations. They established a substantial victim compensation fund for passengers who had experienced discriminatory treatment. Most notably, they promoted Heather Stevens to a newly created position leading diversity and inclusion initiatives across the company. 3 months after the original incident, Marcus found himself in a different first-class cabin, this time on a Sky West flight where he'd been personally invited to experience the airline's transformed service approach. As he settled into his seat, he noticed subtle but significant changes: diverse flight attendants in premium cabins, inclusive imagery in the company magazine, a new customer bill of rights prominently displayed. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Daniels," the flight attendant greeted him warmly. "We're honored to have you flying with us today." The sincere welcome represented more than personal recognition. It symbolized a fundamental shift in culture, the beginning of necessary transformation across an entire industry. Later that week, Marcus finalized the renewed investment agreement with Sky West, now expanded to $150 million. The deal made headlines throughout the financial and transportation sectors, not just for its size, but for its groundbreaking governance provisions. "This represents a new model for corporate accountability," Marcus explained during the signing ceremony. "Pinnacle believes financial investment should drive positive social transformation, not merely economic returns." In the aftermath, Marcus established the Corporate Accountability Foundation, dedicated to fighting discrimination across industries. Funded with $10 million of his personal wealth, the foundation provided legal support for employees and customers facing similar situations while advocating for structural reforms in corporate America. The foundation's first initiative supported a class action lawsuit against another major airline with documented patterns of discrimination. Within months, that airline announced preemptive reforms rather than risk the kind of public reckoning Sky West had. Experienced Bradley Wellington's legal troubles mounted as federal investigations expanded beyond the initial charges. Prosecutors discovered his discrimination practices extended to hiring and vendor selection, with qualified minority candidates and businesses systematically excluded. He eventually accepted a plea agreement carrying substantial financial penalties and prison time. Walter Kingston fared somewhat better legally, though his professional reputation never recovered. His memo outlining passenger comfort strategies became a case study and how corporate euphemisms often mask discriminatory intent. For Marcus, the most meaningful outcome wasn't punitive, but transformative. Sky West's painful public reckoning had triggered industry-wide self-examination. Major airlines reviewed their policies, enhanced training, and established clear anti-discrimination protocols. Passengers of color reported measurable improvements in their treatment across multiple carriers. 1 year after the incident, Marcus boarded another SkyWest flight, this time as the newly appointed chairman of their expanded board. The position represented the culmination of his strategy using financial leverage to gain governance authority and drive sustainable change from within. As he moved through the terminal, Marcus passed a diverse group of pilot trainees in SkyWest uniforms, part of the airline's new initiative to address historic underrepresentation in technical roles. Several nodded respectfully, recognizing the man whose stand against discrimination had helped create their opportunities. Settling into his seat, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him here. What began as a humiliating moment of discrimination had catalyzed meaningful change across an entire industry. The financial power he'd built throughout his career had proven effective, not just for creating wealth, but for dismantling barriers that had persisted for generations. His phone buzzed with a notification. Judge Raymond Harrington had been removed from the federal bench following a judicial misconduct investigation stemming from his handling of the SkyWest case. Another system of protection for the privileged had faced necessary accountability. As the plane ascended, Marcus opened his laptop to review applications for the Corporate Accountability Foundation's newest initiative, a leadership development program for minority executives in transportation industries. The program would create pipelines for diverse talent to reach decision-making positions, ensuring the changes triggered by his experience would outlive any single case or company. The flight attendant approached with a genuine smile. "Can I get you anything, Mr. Chairman?" "Just a water, thank you," Marcus replied, returning her smile. This time she brought it in a proper glass, filled to the top. Marcus Daniels' story offers profound lessons about confronting racism in corporate America. First, it demonstrates how financial leverage can become a powerful tool for social change. When wielded strategically, Marcus didn't merely seek personal vindication, he recognized an opportunity to create systemic transformation across an entire industry. Second, the story highlights how discrimination often depends on systems of protection, from biased judges to complicit executives that must be dismantled collectively. Third, we see that meaningful change requires more than removing problematic individuals. It demands restructuring the environments that enabled them. Perhaps most importantly, the narrative reminds us that accountability begins with documentation and evidence. Marcus's methodical gathering of proof transformed a personal humiliation into an irrefutable case for reform. Finally, the resolution shows that true justice isn't merely punitive, but transformative, creating new pathways for those previously excluded. Real change happens when those with power use it not just for personal success, but to remake spaces where others like them have been systematically denied. Equal treatment and dignity. What moment in this story resonated most deeply with you? Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination that went unchallenged because of power imbalances? Comment below and share your thoughts. If you believe in using whatever influence you have to create positive change, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage and accountability. Share this video with someone who needs to understand how discrimination operates and how it can be effectively challenged. Thank you for listening. And remember, justice isn't just about what happens in courtrooms, it's about the everyday choices we make to stand against discrimination when we see it.